So down here, we're going to say npm install -D ESLint and ESLint config -prettier, like that. This is going to install two different things for us. It's going to install, obviously, ESLint, which is a code linter, which let's talk about what the difference between prettier and ESLint is now, because people kind of confuse the two, and understandably so. There's overlap. Prettier is purely concerned with, is there a space here? Is there a return here? You know, how does this file start? How does it? It's very mechanical, right? It's very much, how is this formatted? But it doesn't care about what the code actually does, right? So it doesn't look at like, does this variable exist? Does this, you know, are we using the wrong method here? Are we using old JavaScript here? As long as it parses, like, prettier doesn't care. ESLint is much more concerned with style, right? It's concerned with what methods are you using? Are you being, you know, accessibility friendly, right? It can check kind of those things. Does that make sense? So you can have ESLint check some of the mechanical stuff, but it doesn't have the power that prettier does for that kind of stuff. So that's why we're going to install the prettier config. Basically say, hey, ESLint, that stuff that you sometimes worry about, like spacing, don't worry about it because prettier has it, right? So install both of those. Okay, and now we have both of these. ESLint config prettier, ESLint. And now we're going to go create a ESLint RC as well. So make a new file, save it, and call this .eslint rc.json. They require that you give it the extension, whereas like pretty-rc does not, because you can also configure this in YAML as well as in JavaScript as well. But we're going to do the JSON way of doing it right now. And yes, you use a period. Did you have a question?
When I ran the command in the terminal, it created a new file called packagelock.json.
Yep, it should do that.
Okay.
So let's just address that briefly. If I go back over here, it created a new file here called packagelock. So packagelock is it's a lock file. So what it actually does is when you deploy your code to production, it's actually locked down the versions. If you look at this, you can see that it has like integrity checks and like where to download it from and what version it's on and stuff like that. And you want it to have this because now I can install exactly the correct versions in production. So what I'm running on my computer is exactly what's running out in production. So the way that you do that when you're running it in production, don't do this on your local computer, but if I do npm ci, it'll actually use the package lock instead of package.json to install exactly the correct versions, right? Whereas if you do npm install, let's see if I go to package.json here. Let's say, you know, next week they release 1.17.1, right? If my file looks like this, it'll actually install 1.17.1. Reason being is because that's a patch version, so it should be compatible, right? Does that make sense? Whereas if I do npm ci, it'll actually install exactly the versions I was using. So it'll still install npm 1.17.0. Does that answer your question? Cool. Yep, it's the same thing as a yarn lock file. The package lock and yarn lock accomplish, as far as I know, exactly the same thing.